Hello and welcome to Heart Standard. I am Joe Sked. I am joined by James Cairney, and we are here to discuss, or look ahead, I should say, to Heart of Midlothian's Premiership encounter with Livingston at Tynecastle Park this evening. Let's just get straight into it. James, you've talked to Scott McIntosh before and after the Rangers game. You've done a lot of analysis the Rangers game. I'm sure I've asked you about the Rangers game. You're fed up talking about the Rangers game, and I think probably Hearts fans are fed up hearing about a game where once again we threw away points with 2 goals in quick succession. So let's park that and move forward. And starting off, let's go with the team lineups. And who would you play? Who would you start tonight for tonight's match?
Well, I guess the first thing to say is I think we're both in agreement that it's likely to be a 4-2-3-1, right? I mean, I don't think we're going to see a back five at home against Livingston. Or
I
if
think
we did, that'd spell big trouble for Naismith. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that would send out the best message. There's probably merit in it. Just I think there's certain players, especially defensively, who look much more suited to a back five, back three. Again, this team was recruited. Sorry, a lot of the squad was recruited with a back three in mind because that's what Robbie Neilson preferred to play. As Naismith has wanted to change to back four, but yeah, I think over the last few weeks he's shown his kind of flexibility, versatility with the squad. We've talked about before how there's a lot of players who can play different positions within different systems. But no, I think it's going to be a back four tonight.
Yeah, I think we say a lot, but Naismith tends to keep us on our toes with this kind of stuff. But I think this is the one time we can be quite certain that it'll be a back four, the 4-2-3-1, I'd imagine. So I guess we start at defence. There's not too many options there. I mean, I'd imagine that Rolls and Kent will be the centre half partnership once again, and I think fullbacks are the only really the area where there's room for debate. So I think that. As we can see here, I think on the left we'll see Alex Cochrane. I was quite impressed with him against Rangers. Obviously, he got a great assist. Had a couple of nice crosses with his right foot actually as well, which is something that I don't think we've seen too much of. And the way he was able to basically, he did it a couple of times against Rangers where he'd open up his body as if he was about to drive down the left, cut back inside, and think a wee cross towards Shankland at the back post. One of them went in. Another one could have went in if it just had a wee bit more on the cross. So I thought that he was really impressive, and obviously Kingsley's still getting back to full fitness after his injury. So I think Cochrane will probably start. And at right back, I would expect Sibbick to get the nod as well. And I know that he's had a few errors in recent games. I mean, he obviously gave away a penalty at Ibrox as well at the weekend. But I do think that despite it all, I mean, I just think he offers a lot more than Ofaya does. I think Ofaya's been a pretty safe and steady pair of hands. I think, you tend to get a 6 out of 10 out of him most times, and I think he's fine. Like, he's never one of those guys who's like, chucking goals in or anything like that. But at the same time, he's not, certainly recently, he's not offered too much going forward and that kind of thing. So I think that will be the back four. Again, I would expect Devlin to come back into the team. I was quite surprised that he was dropped in the first instance anyway from the game against Rangers. I thought that's exactly the kind of game he's very well suited to. But just shows why I know. So I think he will start. I think Nieuwenhof will probably start alongside him. Again, I think it's maybe a bit harsh on Beningame because I thought he was one of the better performers at Ibrox. I thought he had a good game again, and I thought that his role made life really difficult for Rangers at times. But I think that, again, it's that thing of he's still getting back up to fitness. Asking him to start 2 games in the space of a few days, that might be a bit much. And I also think that his performance against Rangers means that he's a shoe-in to start on Sunday. And so you can manage the playing time of the squad and make sure that he's fit for that. So I think we'll see Nieuwenhof. And Nieuwenhof also he offers a bit more creatively. And I think that's going to be, I'm sure we'll go on to talk about. I think that's going to be massively important against Livingston. I think that having these kind of midfielders who can play football, that's going to be a lot more important than guys that can protect the defence in this one.
Yeah, so that obviously it's your lineup that we've shown up here that you've selected. I'll put mine up when I kind of talk through that as well. Even though I've made a slight change from the one that I predicted yesterday. However, I just wanted to come in on Beningame. I think it's widely accepted within the Hearts support that when everyone's fit, Birmingham is the best Hearts centre midfielder in terms of taking control of the ball, having that composure in midfield, just that reliability in midfield. But like you said, he's played an hour against Rangers. It's not so much does he have 2 games within 4 or 5 days, does he have 3 games in the space of a week? And I think he'll probably have a more important role against Rangers on Sunday at Hampden Park, like you said. Going into the front 4, you're bringing Alex Lowry back in?
I am, yes. Partly because of kind of just a thing about managing game time, and that this is of these 3 fixtures, this is the only one he's available for. So again, you kind of want to, I think, it makes sense to have him in just to keep players fresh for Sunday again. But again, more importantly, it's the fact that it's that creativity that he does bring to the team, because we know that Livingston are going to sit deep. We know that it's going to be hard to find space, and I think players like someone like Lowry is exactly who you want in your squad for that. And then we know that he's not always done that in a Hearts jersey. There's been times where he has, times where he hasn't. But I do think his last few appearances for Hearts have been pretty good, with the exception of the Celtic game where it just seemed like nothing was going right for him, But I do think that having someone in that number 10 role who's quite technical, quite creative, is really important for this one. And I think that's why I ended up going for him over someone like, say, Boyce or... I just thought that he offers a wee bit more for this one. And again, similar sort of idea with Forrest and Oda out wide. I think that they've both shown that so far this season that they're quite good with the ball in tight spaces. And I think that's exactly what we're going to see a lot of against Livingston. I feel a little bit bad for Kenneth Vargas for taking him out of the squad, because I think he's been pretty decent so far. But I mean, we're now 10, 11 games into his Hearts career, still no goals, still no assists. And while I think there's a good player in there, I could see why this might be time for a change. Maybe he's had a sustained run in the team, tried out in a few different positions, and while I think he's played quite well, but you still need that end product, and we're not getting that in the moment. So I think that I could see Oda coming back into the squad for this one. I think obviously he came off the bench against Celtic, looked pretty good there. Again, really technical player who's brilliant. Got a lovely little shift of balance, that little turn of the shoulder where he can just skip by somebody. And I think that those kind of 1v1 situations, particularly out wide, they're going to be really important against Livingston. So I think we'll see him maybe come back into the squad, and then obviously up top, you can't look beyond Shankland, can you?
No, I think so. I think Shankland has, going by what I've read and seen, he's scored a goal against Celtic, but he was excellent against Rangers. Again, scored again, and he's got a good record scoring again in big matches as well, which is really important. But I think maybe the 2 week break, the international break, where he didn't go with Scotland. I think he went on holiday, got a holiday with his family, and it's not something that he got a lot of during the summer. I think that might have re-energized him, which is really important, because he's a player who's going to get us 20 goals again. I know he went through an 8-game spell without scoring, but I'm trying to think, what's he on now? Is he on 7, 8, 9 maybe?
7 or 8, I think.
7 or 8, yeah.
I mean, the thing as well, that just to quickly say, I think this was after the Celtic game, after he obviously broke his duck. He pointed out that the number of goals he scored this season, last season, he was at the exact same point. So he's on track to match what he did last season. Again, he had a bit of a slow start and then got going, which I thought was interesting, because obviously a lot of the talk was around, oh God, he's not scored in 7, 8 games, and maybe he's off the boil. But again, it just shows you it's just a different way of looking at it, a different perspective that maybe shows it's not quite as bad as supporters thought at the time.
So we'll move on to mine, and I will try and speak as I look for where I can find to put this up. Yeah, so there's a lot of similarities between our two sides. I actually had in my first side that I had when I was picking it yesterday and kind of predicting it, I thought Vargas would start. However, there's a reason why I don't think he will, and we'll get to that when it comes in. The only change from the back 4 I've got from yourself is Stephen Kingsley coming in. I think Kingsley was really, really good up until his injury, and he did have injury coming in, but I would just wonder if they will see again, look at that game management going into Sunday. I can imagine it'll be having like success that had the Ibrox in terms of keeping Rangers at bay for so long, and then at Hampden, I would imagine Naismith probably would go back to a back 3/5 against Rangers in the semi-final, and with that, Cochrane will be. I think Cochrane's more suited to the wing back role than Stephen Kingsley. Stephen Kingsley's probably more suited to the left back role than Cochrane is. So again, two players who you're very happy start because they're both reliable, very good defenders. So that's why I think maybe he'll Stephen Naismith will go for Kingsley. Moving midfield, yeah, like you, I didn't select Beningame just because of the game time. Nieuwenhof and then Devlin coming in. I do wonder if there's an argument for Nieuwenhof and someone like Grant. Again, I've still not watched the full Rangers game, so you might tell me that Grant didn't offer too much, or it wasn't as influential as he could have been at Ibrox. But at least with Grant, you've got someone who is probably more forward thinking, offers more creativity from deep than perhaps Devlin. But I do think Naismith probably will lean towards Devlin alongside Nieuwenhof, just maybe to give that extra bit of protection, ball winning. And then into the final third, I've opted for Oda ahead of Vargas because I was reading Barry Anderson's piece with Steven Naismith talking about Kenneth Vargas last night, and Naismith made the point that Vargas had to play probably more than he was expected to play to begin the start of his Hearts career just because of injuries. And I just wondered if they'll see tonight as an opportunity to take him out of the starting 11 with Sunday in mind, but also maybe just think, right, you can maybe be, let's see how you are coming off the bench. And when the game maybe it's opened up a bit more stretch, an opportunity to provide a bit of more attacking thrust or pace in the final third. So that's why I think it's not only good for him to maybe rested against Livingston, but probably a good time to bring Oda back into the starting 11. And then you've got Oda and Forrest. I think it'll be really important for them to be really direct against Livingston. Kind of turn when countering to be quick, because Livingston, as we'll come to talk about, they'll play a back five, and as they have in the last couple of games. So it'll be important on the wide men to kind of stay wide, stretch them, get in behind really quickly. And I've gone for Boyce in behind Shanklin just because I think their movement could be important in dragging around to set Livingston centre defensive trio. And again, I don't think Boyce would be in line to start at Hampden against Rangers, especially if it goes with a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2. I think you'd see more Vargas and Shanklin in that role. So that's why I've gone for that. We'll move on and talk about what Hearts can expect from Livingston. The Livingston have lost their last two matches in the league to Dundee and Kilmarnock. There's been a lot of speculation around David Martindale, Livingston manager, and whether he's going to go to St Johnstone. St Johnstone are very keen on having him replace Stephen McLean. However, Livingston released a statement yesterday and said that they denied opportunity, that they would be willing to see Martindale move on, but they wouldn't like to see him move on to a rival within the same league. So, James, what do you expect to see from Livingston? What do you think the threat they pose?
In terms of threat, and I know I'm setting myself up for a fall here, but not much at all.
You're correct. You're correct. Because I looked at StatsBomb, and in terms of
look as well, yeah,
it's really, really bad. They've
really bad.
XG than St Johnstone, and worse. I think it's similar XG per shot. So there are fewer shots than St Johnstone. St Johnstone scored by far the fewest amount of goals in the league, and they are struggling in that regard. There's nothing in terms of their attacking play statistically that you're thinking, oh, that's scary.
No, exactly. It's the opposite. Like absolutely everything's it's either the lowest performing team in the league or one of the lowest performing teams in the league. In terms of things like the amount of XG they're creating, the amount of clear shots they have on goal, the amount of what was the other one there? I've got, sorry. That was the one thing. There was one thing that was actually all right, was the set piece XG, which was fine. Basically everything else was absolutely dreadful. So I think basically from open play, again, touch wood, but I don't think they've really got much. They're offering much of a threat at all. I mean, they come into this in terrible form as well. That's the other thing. I think overall, I think it's something like 8 games without a win. Quite a couple of heavy defeats in there as well. So they are struggling at the moment, and they don't look like the Livingston sides that we've seen over the last few years. I don't think they still work incredibly hard off the ball, but on it, there's really not much at all, to be honest. I mean, and interestingly, actually, off the ball defensively, there's a lot of their stats are kind of similar to Hearts. There's, things like the amount of aggressive actions they attempt, and the amount of pressures they put on, and things like that. So I think that they do work you hard off the ball, and one of the things that they are very good at actually is they've got a very low passes allowed per defensive action. So basically, that's a measure of how effective an opposition's pressing is. So, for instance, Livingston on average generally allow around about 7 passes for the opposition until they win the ball back. And that's a pretty low figure. These are one of these stats where you want the lowest figure possible.
Yeah.
And for them, that is a low one. And, that shows you that, while they are obviously very robust, very structured, and very defensive in the way that they play, they're still quite they won't just sit back and absorb pressure. They want to go out and win the ball back. So I think because of that, Hearts need to get the ball moving and moving quickly, because players are going to come out and pressure them, players are going to come out, and again at that point it's all about trying to drag them out of position and try and find those little gaps. So, and I think the best way to do that is quick football, quick simple football. Just take a touch, pass it on, just make sure you're finding your man. And if you do that enough, the gaps should hopefully start to appear. So I think that's what we'll see. That's what I'd like to see from Hearts this evening. I think that again, a lot's going to be asked of Livingston in possession, of Hearts in possession. Sorry, when they're on the ball, and so these are the kind of games where someone like Neuenhoff, for instance, someone like Lowry, guys who can get the ball in midfield and can keep it moving. Those guys are going to be really crucial, I think, tonight.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think there's areas that you can really get at Livingston. The right-sided centre-back at the 3, Louis Perez. I've watched him, and sometimes he goes from looking like one of the best defenders in the league to looking like the worst defender in the league. Just so erratic. And the big thing about Livingston is that fans will see Livingston had an identity and it's probably stuck, just being that direct team, kind of long balls in your face, aggressive. They still have that, but they've also got a lot of technical players. They're not big brutes. They've got some of that in their team. But you look at like Jason Holt, Stephen Kelly, Sean Kelly, Andrew Shinney, Scott Pittman, James Penrice, and Stephen Bradley. Is like a lot more technical players, and it sometimes feels like they're kind of caught between two identities. And Martindale's probably tried to evolve them, and they're still in that process of evolving from that route one kind of direct team into a more possession orientated team. However, their 2 forwards will always keep them in a game. The 2 forwards that I rate a lot in terms of Bruce Anderson and Joel Newbley. Joel Newbley doesn't score enough goals for my liking, and that's why he's still at Livingston and not got the move that perhaps it was touted this summer, especially by David Martindale. But he's someone who will be able to cause a lot of problems, and I wouldn't be surprised if he played on maybe Kai Rose, and Bruce Anderson is just a kind of live wire, an absolute nuisance in attack. So they do have that option to go from back to front really quickly, which Hearts haven't dealt with all that well at times this season when we've been playing against a team like Livingston, who's going to allow a lot of the possession and trying to kind of entice the Hearts fullbacks up. So it kind of leaves them basically 2 and 2 or 2 and 3 at the back. So there's things to be wary of, but this isn't a Livingston team that maybe have caused the problems that they have to Hearts in the past, which brings on to the importance of a win tonight, because it can't be played down, and it's not something that Steven Naismith tried to play down either. It was interesting seeing some of his comments, or hearing some of his comments yesterday. There's a couple that stood out with regards to that. He talked about a fast start and playing in the opposition half and then giving the crowd to something. We'll come on and talk about the crowd, but he said we can't look any further on from this game because we need a win. We want a win, and he kind of just hammered home how important it is to win, especially the recent results, and he'll be very understanding of the pressure that is being put on by the fans.
No, I think so. I think he does seem to get it, and you're right. I mean, I think he is right. I think this is pretty much must-win territory at this point, just because we know that obviously the last couple of games against the Old Firm, it's been back-to-back defeats, one more back defeats, and you want to get back on track.
On the back of losing a 2-goal lead in the derby as well.
Of course, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, there have been a few kind of bumps in the road recently. I mean, and I'm going to shamelessly steal this bit of insight from Scott McIntosh that I saw on Twitter, friend of the show. But he made the point that if Hearts win tonight, then that's only one defeat in the last 6 meetings against non-Old Firm teams. That's not so bad. But then he also made the point where if Hearts were to draw or lose, that means they'd either have 2 points or 1 point against 5 teams that you'd think Hearts shouldn't be getting, like, 5th maximum points from, but you should be doing a lot better than 1 or 2. So those would be Livingston, Dundee, Motherwell, Kilmarnock, and St Mirren as well. So I think that kind of hits the nail on the head. I think the last kind of 5-6 games, when you look back at them, there have been some points of encouragement, some points that have been really frustrating and disappointing. And I think that this kind of match is the kind of one that can really frame all those. I think that's what it comes down to. And the other thing to remember as well, of course, is the fact that there's a fag paper between most of the league at the moment. I mean, there's 2 points between, Kelly in 4th and Aberdeen in 10th or something like that? 11th, sorry. So I mean, there's absolutely nothing between the teams. So between most of the teams in the league at the moment. So one defeat could conceivably see you tumble down to 8th, 9th, 10th, no bother. Whereas one win, and all of a sudden you can start pulling away from that crowd. So again, it is massive, and it's at that time of the it's at that stage of the season where everything's so congested at the moment, and a lot of teams are still finding their feet, and I'd probably include Hearts within that. But I mean, because you do look at the table and you think Hearts will surely improve at some point. Hibs look as if they're getting better under Nick Montgomery, in my opinion. Aberdeen will surely get their act together at some point. And then obviously you've got Motherwell and St Mirren this season as well, who I think they're both in for good seasons, relatively speaking. I think I can see them both challenging for top 6, both challenging for Europe. So getting points on the board now, whilst the likes of Aberdeen, for instance, are still struggling, that's really important, I think, to try and sort of build up a bit ahead of steam, because as we saw last season, even getting those points on the board early certainly helped Hearts, but then obviously they let that huge gap slip, and then they paid the price for it come the end of it all.
That's, I mean, a lot of what you said there is just feeds into the frustration of the Hearts fans, is that this was a perfect opportunity to just have this lead over the rest of the league and just be putting distance between Hearts and Hibs and Hearts and Aberdeen. Aberdeen, watched them a few times this season. Not a great team to watch, especially against in games where they're expected to win. You can say the same about Hearts. And then watched Hibs last night. They looked in cruise control and then gave up 2 really sloppy goals. They lack a hell of a lot of depth. They've got a good starting 11, but beyond that, they don't have the depth that Hearts do. This will be the 11th game of the season, so you can paint a really good picture from those first 11 games, because you faced every team once, and Hearts need to win this, because there's been one home league win this season, which is when you consider they've played Motherwell at home, Kilmarnock at home, who else at home, and then you've obviously got you've had Hibs and Aberdeen at home as well. It's it's not good, especially when Tynecastle was meant to be this kind of seen this as this fortress. So it's having 4 wins or 14 points from 11 games. I still don't think that's very good, but it's a hell of a lot better than having 11 from 11 or 12 from 11 and sitting middle of the table or bottom 6 going into after the first round of fixtures. So it's I don't think it'll be lost on anyone within the Hearts kind of the management team or in the players that this is such a massive game, and I think that will be seen in the crowd as well. It's again something that Steven Naismith made a point on. He said a lot of people yesterday said I have mentioned it a lot since I've been taking the team. I think it's such a big part of things. The demands at this club, they don't come much greater than other than probably the Old Firm. When you're on the back of 2 league defeats, the mindset is this better be good or we're not going to be happy, and that is simply a fact. So he knows that it's so important to get a fast start because the atmosphere will be subdued tonight, certainly to begin with. It is miserable through in Edinburgh. It'll be kind of cold and dark, and I think there'll be a lot of fans turn up tonight with apathy and almost looking to be annoyed by performance, just to kind of vent their frustration at the performances this season. So that's where a fast start, and people go on and on about this all season or last season. It needs to start happening, especially at Tynecastle, to ensure that it's a more positive environment for the players to play in.
No, of course. And you're right. I mean, because it's that thing of if the crowd do start getting frustrated or they start to turn, all of a sudden that can make life very difficult for Hearts, And
yeah, sorry, just to interrupt you there, but we saw it with the last season when Steven Naismith, Robbie Nielsen's last game in charge. It was a home to St Mirren and lost 2-0, and it was just very quickly the mood changed, and you knew as the game went on this was essentially Robbie Nielsen's last stand as manager, and it's important that the players take that responsibility to ensure that kind of atmosphere doesn't emerge.
No, definitely, and like you say, a lot of that is down to the players, because I'm sure Naismith will be instructing them to start strongly and get going from the offset. So you're right. I mean, it's down to the players to it's a mentality thing. I think of making sure that again when you're trying to play a bit quicker. You're not taking 1 or 2 or 3 touches to do something that only takes 1. That kind of thing. I think as well. I mean, it's important to remember that obviously slow starts have been a big thing this season, but in 2 of the last 3 games, Hearts have actually started quite well. Against Rangers, obviously they took the lead early on. Against Hibs again in the derby, they started pretty well in that game. But they obviously counterpoint that is there was a Celtic game where they started abysmally. So there's, I think there's a little bit of room for encouragement there. The fact that I think you look back over the last kind of 5-6 games, and Hearts have generally been starting the games stronger than they were during the first few games. I mean, even against something like the League Cup game at Rugby Park, okay, it took until the end of the first half till George Grant opened the scoring, but again, it's a much stronger start than what we've seen against the likes of St Mirren or Motherwell or Dundee or St Johnstone. So I think that's something that are tentative signs of progress there. Understand that also we didn't see that in the Celtic game, but and Celtic are the best team in the country, and they can just kind of do that to you. But I don't mean to make excuses, but they are just a very good team, and they've got some excellent players who, and when they're on their day, as they were that day, it can be difficult to stop them. So I think we'll definitely need to see a strong start to get the crowd on side, even if it's just a case of again not just passing it around the defence or getting into midfield and turning back. There needs to be a lot of just things like forward passes. Try to find runners with through balls, even if they don't come off, even if you overhit it and it goes out for a goal kick or whatever. Just that intent alone is enough, I think, at times, just to at least make the fans go, all right, Joe, they're trying to be aggressive, they're trying to play in the front foot, and even if it doesn't work, that can still buy you a wee bit more time before the crowd start to get frustrated.
Yeah, so that's why I'll kind of alluded to at the start of the show when talking about the lineups, where I think there's so much responsibility on Forrest and Oda to get the ball and drive at the opposition wing back or full back, and that's where I would like to see kind of Boyce come in, and he's someone who would want to take the ball all the time and to drop in, get the ball and start to and kind of get moves kind of happening and going. So yeah, it'll be it's certainly going to be an interesting night at Tynecastle Park. We'll both be there. Whether we do a very quick pre-match show, we're still to decide. But I'll ask you now, James. Give me a prediction.
I'm going to go 2-0 Hearts. I think it'll be a win and relatively comfortable one. But well, we'll see, I suppose. Are you feeling brave? You're going to make a prediction?
Well, I will 3-0.
Oh right! Oh, very ambitious.
Yeah, it is very ambitious, and some would say foolish, naive, and idiotic. But let's go for that. And I'll even go out on a limb. And I've just noticed that Livingston have not been great at defending set pieces this season. So let's go for Hearts to finally score a goal from a set piece as well, and look a threat from there. So yeah, that's a lot of things. A lot of things could go wrong or could go right, but let's see.
Indeed.
Well, thank you very much for everyone listening. I'm just laughing at Ian Lobin, who has commented on YouTube. Tonight has all the makings of one of those very Hearts-like nights where results elsewhere go our way and we don't take advantage. Now, there's a more realistic take or prediction. So let's see what tonight brings. But thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And we will be back after the match or first thing tomorrow to review the Heart of Midlothian v Livingston Premiership encounter, which hopefully Hearts have picked up the 3 points in.